Oklahoma recruiting momentum isn't just national, it's becoming strategic. Tonight, we're starting with big news out of the Southeast as Oklahoma General Manager Jim Nagy and his staff have positioned the Sooners with an inside track to land a commitment from 2027 blue chip quarterback Jamison Roberts out of Alabama. We'll break down what makes Roberts such a priority, why Oklahoma is gaining traction in SEC country in this early in the cycle, and what this pursuit tells us about the Sooners' long-term QB plans under Brent Venables. Plus, we'll get into early buzz surrounding the 2026 early enrollees already grinding through winter workouts, and later how Oklahoma continues to expand its recruiting footprint nationally. Hey, this is Sooner Recruit Intel. Let's get after it.
All right, there we go. Chris Mason, we are back, man. It's been a minute since we've done a live, but we're here with our Monday night recruiting pods. We'll let you guys know if we bump into another day. We know Jason is on right now, but we thank you guys for definitely coming on with us. We got some recruiting stuff to get into. Chris Mason, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Doing good, doing good. So yeah, Chris Mason, let's go ahead and jump into it. Well, before we do that, like and subscribe. Definitely do all those things with each of these channels here. You got the Horns Down podcast. You got Chris Mason's podcast. Road to 1,000. Trying to get those subscribers up for sure, but try to push this content out. But again, glad you guys are here. If you guys got questions or whatnot, or you got any info, definitely put it in the chat. We will get to it as we can. But Chris Mason, with no further ado, let's get to it. OU is leading for a 2027 quarterback target. Go ahead and talk about that. That's our lead story tonight.
Yeah, so OU back in, I think it was November when he visited for one of the late games that OU had. Jamison Roberts from Saraland, Alabama, who's currently a three-star quarterback, but he had a big junior year, especially in the Alabama playoffs. Just had banger games after game, just played fantastic. So OU made that offer, and he had the only other, that was the newest offer since Peyton Houston went ahead and committed to LSU, which is kind of a surprise back in 2025. So OU's targeted Jamison Roberts. There's been some thought that maybe Peyton Houston might decommit from LSU because they picked up the kid from USC, the 5-star. They poached that USC 5-star high school quarterback who signed Longstreet. Is that his
Yeah,
name?
yeah.
Some thought maybe Peyton Houston would open things back up. I don't think that's happening, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure OU is going to double back down to Peyton Houston if he does hit the open market again. So basically, Jamison Roberts was part of a big Alabama combine event this weekend. And coming out of that, there are several national writers, primarily the big national guys. Chad Simmons over on On3 is heavily indicating that he likes where OU is with Jamison Roberts. And then Jamison posted a final 8. I'm not going to go through all 8 schools and bother you with that because there's only 2 schools on his 3 schools, two schools other than OU on his top 8 that I think are the most relevant. And he's listing Auburn and he's listing Kentucky. So obviously Auburn is the in-state school. That's probably the school that he's most interested in and sort of has the most fan connection with. And obviously Kentucky, Will Stein is going to make a big play in recruiting. He's going to be telling guys like Jamison Roberts, I'm going to make you the next Dante Moore, the next Bo Nix. That's what Will Stein has to pitch and sell, right? That's to young high school quarterbacks, that's what he's going to do. So I think those are the 2 schools that would worry me the most. But I think OU has been with Roberts longer, more consistently. And Auburn seems to be targeting another quarterback, a high 4-star quarterback. So they seem to be elsewhere. Alabama, I don't think is going to jump into this battle. They've got themselves focused on 2 other quarterbacks instead. They already have a quarterback verbal, and they're looking after. They're trying to get the Louisiana quarterback Elijah Haven. They're focusing all their energies there. So has built so OU looks like they're in great shape according to these national writer guys. Then obviously you guys know I have sources as well. And my sources say that they feel like OU has a big lead for Jamison Roberts, and that when Jamison visits on March 7th for the Future Freaks huge Junior Day weekend, it's kind of where all OU recruiting news is moving towards. I think OU will go if when he visits for that, makes his visit for that weekend. I think OU could possibly lock this situation up.
So, Chris Mason, that brings me to the question I want to ask you. And this is different because nobody asked this type of question. Do we really want his commit that early?
Yes.
Excuse me. Let me rephrase it. Excuse me. We want his commitment that early. You're saying yes.
Yes.
I say with the things you just talked about, with obviously Will Stein, and then obviously, and again, Auburn is there in the mix. Is it too fast to pull the trigger on him, or do you want to get him in and then fight everybody else off? Because I guess I'm just I feel like the whole, hey, if you commit to us, that means that you're done with the recruiting trails, all the rest of that stuff. The kid is still going to take visits. So I guess that's the question of, do you want to? You're not necessarily battling things out, but are you kind of, you're our guy until we see otherwise. But do you want to take his commitment? Do you want to allow him to go ahead and parade around with those other schools and kind of figure out what's going on there? Obviously, he's coming to Junior Day. He can be a solid commit, this and that. But is that something that you want this early in the process? We've been through this a number of times enough to know that it can be kind of a bit ridiculous as it kind of lingers on.
It can. One thing I would say is that Auburn's focused on this kid called Israel Abrams from Illinois. So I think they OU's focused exclusively. See, Topher B just mentioned that. That's just what I just said, Topher. Thanks for the backup there. So Auburn seems to be splitting their level of interest into several guys. Okay, and OU's focused exclusively on Jamison Roberts. You want your quarterback in the class as early as possible. That can be the leader of your class. It helps you with wide receivers. It helps you with maybe tight ends. So it's never too. There may be I wouldn't say it's never. Getting a quarterback. You can get a quarterback too early sometimes, but overall, I would say that if you could get Jamison Roberts by around the spring game, something like that, maybe he comes back for the OU spring game, presuming OU's going to have a real spring game. Again, that's at least the story out there. If you can get him back for that and verbally committed there when there's a bunch of other recruits around, especially offensive skill guys that you're targeting, I think that makes the most sense for OU. And, I think OU's put a lot of effort out in front, like, look, you're our guy. We want you. We're not splitting our time between you and 3 or 4 other targets. And, that recruiting message used to work for Lincoln Riley. He certainly was able to land high school quarterbacks with that pitch. So a lot of schools do that. So I think that, OU's trying to work Jamison Roberts with that strategy. And again, the kid's 6'3", 200 pounds, maybe closer to 6'4". He had a massive year last year. I think on the camp circuit, he's only going to be higher rated. I think if you can get him by March and stop an avalanche of other schools, then I think that would be best. But like I said, if you're asking me who's the biggest competitors, Auburn's obviously a worry. But if they follow Israel Abrams all the way until he makes a decision, or maybe that kid drags it out until midsummer, and then Auburn tries to flip back to Roberts. Sometimes you just can't do that. We've seen it in the past, OU trying to redirect to kids, and it just doesn't work. I mean, kids talk. You know, the Elite 11 quarterbacks. They're all at camp together. They know where kids are going. They want to make sure they don't. That no kid chooses the same school. Things like that. So I think you want Roberts as soon as possible, and I think ideally OU would lock him up sometime this spring.
All right. Well, we'll go from there. We shall see. Now, are there? I am interested. I guess I do need to ask the question. I'm sorry, I having all these pop up questions, Chris Mason. But I mean, are there any other quarterback targets that are kind of in the queue, just in case there were things to kind of mess this up?
The only other name I've heard thrown around a little bit would be Blake Roscoff from OU's recruiting Arizona heavily, right? They've got Mikael Davis from there. They're recruiting a bunch of kids from Arizona in 2027 and 2028. He's 6'5", 235. He's a bigger kid, big arm. He would be a different kind of quarterback. That's a name to maybe think about. Other than that, the quarterbacks are kind of choosing places. Gunnar Rivers is going to choose NC State. Colton Nussmeier probably chooses LSU. Maybe he becomes available. And do you try and get the younger Nuss if you can't get Jamison Roberts? I don't know. We'll have to see. But so far, there aren't any indications that OU's ready to pull the trigger on anybody else. I thought they might offer Dane Weber, quarterback from California, but he looks like he may be going, Kansas is making a big push for him. OU never offered. And he's got like Stanford and Arizona State and some other schools looking at him. So we'll see. I mean, Oregon's going to pick up a kid from Arizona in the next month or so called Will Menchie. There's an interesting quarterback from Tennessee, Andre Adams, that I thought OU might look at. Looks like he's maybe leaning to Nebraska. Sorry, not Nebraska. I'm trying to think. Where was he going? Yeah, I think maybe it was FSU. It was FSU that he was interested in him. So it's going to be interesting to see how things shake out here. There's a big kid from Utah who's verbal to Illinois, Camden Lapati. I could see maybe OU go in that direction. So there's some names out there that I think that are some obvious connections to the Sooners, but we'll have to just see. They are focused all in on Jamison Roberts right now.
Got you. You want to answer Jamie Satterfield's question right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could use him as a gadget quarterback, but I don't think he's an every down quarterback in the college game. I think that's probably a waste of his skill set. If he wants to be a quarterback, an every down be a quarterback in the college game, I think he's going to have to choose a different location than Oklahoma. And he makes too much sense as a slot receiver for OU from that perspective. And Emmett Jones made that offer. OU's not playing games with Graydon. They like him a lot as a prospect, but when Emmett Jones is making that offer, and he's not like the Oklahoma guy. If Brandon Hall had made the offer, you might be like, well, who knows what position he's looking at, because Brandon Hall recruits is one of the state of Oklahoma is kind of his territory. But when Emmett Jones is going to Broken Bow and making that offer, OU views him exclusively as a wide receiver for right now.
That's real. All right, then let's keep it moving. So we got 2026 winter workout hype. What are you hearing out there on the trail?
Okay, so there's a lot of stuff kind of floating around. So I talked to my sources, and the one thing that is clear is, so if you've been on our live streams, you know how big a Jonathan Hatton fan I've been, right? I was basically crushed when we lost him, and I'm not sure I did a happy dance on the YouTube live stream when he flipped his verbal to OU in December, but I was pretty damn happy about that. So and if you watch Jonathan Hatton's video, his huddle videos, it's just like, wow, look at that kid. So the hype on Jonathan Hatton's been clearly established. I mean, just physically, the kid's a freak. 6'1", 220, running a track 10.5, 10.6 kind of time. So all the hype on Jonathan Hatton is huge. That was all the hype. Well, he's meeting all of that in winter workouts. He's hitting that. He's doing everything they thought he would be. He's probably even exceeding that bar a little bit in what they thought he would be. So Hatton, as expected, or even better than what the Sooner coaches thought they were getting at running back. The big story is Desefin Walker, has just blown all the numbers that they thought. They thought if you heard Nagy was praising Des Walker in an interview he did with Gabe and Teddy, talking about Walker's skill set. And the problem with Walker last year is that his high school team was terrible. I don't think they won a football game. So his highlights are just few and far between from a season. Because when you're the best guy and in high school and you're a running back and your O-line's bad and your quarterback is bad, it's hard to really function and get too many stats and look that good, right? So Walker has blown away everyone in winter workouts. They think he could be as good as Hatton, and then this might be the best 1-2 running back recruiting guys that OU's gotten since. There was a lot of buzz on Barnes and Sawchuk when they came in, and it seems like it could be even better than that. Walker is he's a big back. He's 5'11", 6 foot, 210, 215. Hatton's 220. So you're talking about two big physical running backs that are already just workout warriors. They look fantastic. So the buzz on those two guys couldn't be higher. And OU, and I know a lot of folks are like, why when we got Hatton, it was like, oh, great. And Walker kind of got pushed to the side a little bit. But obviously Nagy and the scouting staff pushed for Walker to be recruited and to be offered. And then DeMarco went in there and got that verbal commitment because Walker wanted to play for DeMarco. I mean, DeMarco had that cachet walking in with Walker. I know you quickly grabbed that attention. So, but I mean, then we got Hatton got Hatton back, and Walker's kind of like, we got Hatton. Well, Walker's nice, but it looks like from all of the stories right now so far through winter workouts, OU may have gotten an absolute steal in Desefin Walker. I mean, he may blow up his recruiting rankings.
So let me go ahead and ask the obvious question. Do you expect those two to contribute early this year? Obviously, we know the surgeries that have happened with X-Rob. We know that if there is a spring game, we know that those will be the two. Those two and, gosh, you're still here. We know those two will get a lot of carries. Who's the third back in that room right now?
Avant, isn't it?
Avant Lloyd. Yeah, Lloyd Avant. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So we know it would be pretty much those three guys.
I mean, the younger Sawchuk is probably somewhere in the mix on a scholarship, and obviously Andy Bass seems to be back fully working out with the team. What can he give you after 2 knee surgeries? I don't know.
Yeah,
but that gets you up to 7 bodies that you have for spring. So you've got some things you can do in terms of if you want to just sit X-Rob and Blaylock out most of spring. You've got bodies. You've got enough bodies to make spring work, right? You've got enough running backs to keep it going. But I think Chris, based upon the fact that they're going to get a lot of runway to work in spring, and based upon what we're hearing, I think they're going to be a factor in the fall.
I mean, they should, and that's what you want. You want that real competitive depth, right? So, got to have that to go to the places that you want to go because now you're just building that room. So, keep going, Chris.
And obviously, I don't know that Xavier Robinson is injury prone, but he was banged up last year twice. Okay.
Yes.
And Blaylock got hurt his freshman year. I don't know that he's injury prone. Neither of these backs were injury prone in high school, right? Tory Blaylock wasn't missing a lot of time. Same thing for Xavier Robinson when he was at Carl Albert. Everyone's like, he didn't play much his freshman year. I'm like, well, that's not because he was hurt. That's because he came in a little bit out of shape. In 2024, he didn't see the field because he wasn't in shape and didn't know the offense. That's why he didn't run the ball earlier in 2024. So that wasn't an injury situation. But 2025, he had some injury stuff that hurt him in spring and hurt him in August camp, and then he was finally healthy. He's finally healthy. You used him in October once he was healthy. So, but your two backs were banged up. They were in the man. Neither one of those guys should really have been playing in that Alabama game, right? If we'd had any real depth, right? That's why the opt situation, we're going to mention that any more than we need to, was so annoying for OU fans, and that's why the Barnes situation was a little bizarre, right? Like, what the hell's going on here? Both those guys. So yeah, I think you have to get them ready in spring to be big factors in the fall.
Yeah. I think you got to go in here with a solid rotation of 4 just in case you're still trying to work guys in or whatnot. But hopefully you're hopeful that, guys will be ready to go. The entire unit will be able to go by fall camp, so we can have real reps, real competition, and go out there and do what we need to do. Because I think this year right here, again, that championship window, I'm not necessarily saying is closing, but it's pretty open right now. And you have a chance to go do something pretty special. So keep moving on. Next group you want to talk about?
Yeah, so OU's consistently been recruiting Arizona and California to a heavier level over the last sort of 12 months, right? And you look at the OU commitments. OU has 3 guys from California and 1 guy from Arizona. So you've got Tevin Epps, Jackson Stokes, and Elijah Harmon, and then you've got Mikhail Davis from Arizona. So OU's definitely recruiting that region to a much heavier degree and finding quite a bit of success. So recently there's been some updates from the various recruiting networks, primarily the On3 guys, where 2 names appear to be a little bit more prominent for OU than you would first think about. So the first name is cornerback Dante Wright from Long Beach Poly. He is a teammate of Juju Johnson, who OU's heavily recruiting and doing a good job with. He's verbal to Georgia, but he's looking around. He's going to junior days. He's got visits going on. That's a weak commitment, if you ask me. And he's talking about how OU's been making a big push for him. And I think, Chris, if he shows up at this March 7th junior day event OU has, where they're bringing in California kids and they'll have 3 or 4 verbal commitments there, things can get real interesting with OU and Dante Wright. He's the number 31 player in the nation, according to the 247 composite. So that puts him right as a 5-star. He's 6'1", 170 pounds, and would be just an asset in the cornerback room. You could pick up him and Juju Johnson to go with the guys already trying to get, and Gabriel Osborne. OU would be reloading their secondary room to a pretty heavy degree, which they kind of need to do after some of the portal exits of the younger guys that they had.
So Chris Mason, I get it. That's great and all, but who the hell is your DB coach? I think that's the question, right?
Well,
it's just Monday. It's just Monday. You did say it could take a week or 2 to figure it out. They're not necessarily trying to rush a decision, but who the hell is your cornerback coach? Like, we need to know.
Well, no one knows. So no one has that info right now. It's not out there. I think you'll see some movement by the end of the week, which would give the cornerback coach 3 weeks transition before this big recruiting weekend I'm talking about, March 7th, and we'll continue to talk about every week coming up to that. So we're going to have, it's going to be interesting. I think you'll hear something by the end of the week. We'll have a leaked name from where they're leaving from. That's always tends to be how these things work these days. It's not an OU person breaking it. It's the person breaking the story is the beat writer for the school they're leaving from. Similar to the Bills thing, with the Bills taking Jay Valai. So I think that's I think by the end of this week we have a clear answer on where OU is starting to target. Maybe have a name by the end of this week, because I think you want this guy in place for a good 2-3 weeks before this junior day that you're throwing all this energy planning an organization behind.
All right.
You want I told you my guess last week. My guess is if they can get him to take the job, I think it's TJ Rushing. That's my guess.
I think a lot of people will be pleased with that. I think there's a bunch of names out there, honestly, that you would feel really good about. You
Yeah,
know,
it's
but that's the thing. I don't want to marry a name right now because we say T.J. Rushing, we say hell Paul Gonzalez. I'm just throwing random names out there, and then all of a sudden it is um, Lungar, right? You're just like
well,
I don't even know where he came from.
we didn't know Nate Dryling's name very much,
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
We heard the guy before him, Zach Alley. That Zach Alley's name was flowing around for a while before OU hired him, so that name was kind of obvious. But Nate Dryling was less obvious. So or it could be a name kind of out of nowhere. I mean, there's a lot of poaching of college coaches to the NFL right now, and some of that's going a little bit back and forth. So we'll see how that shakes out. But if I had to guess, I would say T.J. Rushing could make a lot of sense. So one other thing about coaching and recruiting is the ex-Clemson defensive lineman that they're looking to bring in as a defensive line coach, as a defensive line analyst. I don't think we should ignore the potential of that to impact defensive line recruiting. We know that the rules around that have changed completely, and it's former Clemson Tiger defensive tackle Deshaun Williams. He's been in the NFL. He played for Brent at Clemson. He was a very good player at Clemson. And then he's been batting around the NFL for a while. Had a good 3-year run with the Broncos before sort of retiring. I think let's not ignore the fact that OU's bringing in. So the way I read his resume and his connections, Chris, is he sounds like the Miguel Chavis of defensive tackles.
Okay. Interesting. So
you
start somebody who could be kind of in training just in case you were to maybe lose out on gosh, I'm forgetting
Todd
so
Bates.
yeah, Todd Bates if he retired or yeah.
Yeah, you basically, he's someone he can come in and mentor, and you've got an additional resource. And this guy, again, he's got an NFL background. He got that NFL background from being at Clemson, being under Brent, kind of a younger guy, maybe to help Todd Bates and Chavis with the workload with the defensive line and defensive end guys. Some guy who's probably a very impressive guy in person in terms of being able to relate to the younger defensive linemen that OU's recruiting who want to be in the NFL. It's very easy to say, hey, I've just done playing 3 years in the NFL, and you know who got me ready? Brent Venables. Those things resonate with guys. So that's something else to keep an eye on. So the other name that I've mentioned before, and if you're on my Patreon, it's not a new name for you because I've kind of taken a wild card prediction on him being part of the OU class. It's wide receiver Quinton Hale from California. He's 247 composite, number 51 in the nation. That's not the 51st wide receiver, the number 51st player in the nation. So the two guys I'm talking about, Dante Wright's 5-star, and Quinton Hale is right on the fringe of that. USC's probably the leader there, but OU is making a massive push, throwing a lot of energy behind it. This is where having your quarterback in the fold can help. I think OU's pushing to have Quinton come to this Future Freaks event on March 7th. OU's recruiting a lot of Cali kids, both 27 and 28. Stacy Ford is OU's Cali recruiting, stealth weapon in getting OU visits from California kids and getting interest from California kids. So, I'm glad to see Stacy Ford got taken care of by the Regents last week. At the end of January. So that's another name to consider. That would be another That would be, he'd probably be the best wide receiver, that OU's gotten a verbal commitment from, ignoring the 5-star three guys who kind of all flamed out a little bit. But this guy sort of has like CD Lamb kind of upside.
Oh man, we keep throwing that name out there. I know my uncle and I, we thought Kearney had that type of potential, and obviously, I still think highly of Kearney. Don't understand the Wisconsin thing, but hey, it is what it is. But regardless, though, I think that you just kind of sit there and you say we're I think we're begging for that type of receiver to come back to Norman. The Hollywoods, the Didi Westbrooks. I'm just talking recently. Obviously, we can go back in time. Mark Clayton and all those guys. Hell, even an Iglesias, which honestly I kind of think that it wouldn't be that far of a comp, that crazy of a comp to say like somebody like Satania could be like an Iglesias type, but the Kenny Steels, those guys who were kind of true ones here
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
at
they made those big catches, right? I mean, they were the guys. I
just
mean,
always open. Just could find a way to get open. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, and I think he's that. He's. I mean, he's 6'3", about 185 pounds. That's pretty much close to what CD was coming out of high school. He didn't. If the pictures of CD from his freshman to his junior year. I mean, you just look at how that kid, hit the weight room and developed. It was like, all right, dude, that's the before and after photo you want. But he's very talented, and OU's making a big push. We'll see if they can, top USC for him. But like I said, USC just had him on campus in January. I think they thought they were going to close the deal on him, and they didn't. So kind of leaving things a little bit open. Alabama was the presumed SEC location for him, and I think Alabama's losing some steam due to some other targets. You can't just recruit. This isn't the old Nick Saban world where you can just take 4 of the top 50 wide receivers in the country and just have them sit on your roster waiting to play. Right? Recruiting doesn't work that way any longer. You can't just stack players. This is why when you look at offensive line recruiting, OU has Cooper Hackett and Caden Penny. They're both 5-star offensive linemen. This is why OU's had to drop off a number of 5-star offensive linemen, top 50 kind of offensive linemen that they were looking at, because you just can't have that much coin and that much money invested, in one spot. Cooper Hackett is a elite looking left tackle. You can't sign 3 guys like that. Again, this isn't the world where Bama was able to sign 10 to 12 5-stars and just pat them on the roster every year.
no, everybody's looking to try to play for all right, straight off the bat.
And Alabama just doesn't have the NIL money to do that. I mean, they wouldn't have had the NIL money back then to do that. No one has that kind of cash to do that. Plus, kids are smart. They're like, well, you already have 2 5-star offensive tackles. Where am I going to play? And at some point, you're like, well, screw that. I'll just go to A&M. I'll go to Texas. I'll go somewhere else. I mean, this is why OU wasn't really a competitor for Felix Ojo last year, right?
The only
He,
thing, the only thing that's really that helps you in that door is the championships. And I think that's
yeah,
something that Ohio State and and Georgia can talk about right now. I think the problem with Bama is that Saban's not there anymore. You're still trying to figure out what this DeBoer era is truly going to look like. This is a big year for him, and then also God, there was another team I was going to say, but you look at Indiana, you say Indiana should be there next year, but they're spending money left and right in the portal and doing everything that way and bringing in guys that they feel will fit the culture. Now, don't get me wrong, their recruiting is starting to really buzz up, but we
it
shall see if
is.
that sticks. I know a lot of people are not necessarily thinking that they're going to just fall completely out of it, but a lot of people are preying on their downfall. They think that they're going to go back to the bottom dwellers or whatnot, but we shall see. I don't think that's going to happen. Regardless, though, I think a lot of the top teams are kind of different in that aspect of what's going on. So you still have a few teams who can talk to you about championships and the NFL, draftees that they've had on their roster, so they can talk to you about development, XYZ, blah blah blah, this and that. So there are a few teams out there, but they're far in between when you look at the college ranks because not everybody can speak to that. You get what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
you
I
know,
mean, Ohio State at wide receivers, that was kind of an anomaly because of Hartline, right?
yeah.
I mean, that now he's left. We'll see if Ohio State can continue that blistering 5-star wide receiver recruiting and wide receiver production and development, right? I mean, that was the thing. That was the crazy thing there. So, Thievery's asking about how good is Roberts. So, he's a 3-star right now, but his offer list is starting to indicate that, he's probably closer to a top 200, top 250 kid. He had a great junior year, but it was really his playoff run where he started just sort of hitting it. He was, throwing for 300 yards, rushing for 100 yards every game, 5 touchdowns a game. He kind of went on a 4-game blitz there and took Saraland, I think, to the state semifinals. So that's kind of where he is. Whereas I think Peyton Houston is probably as well developed as any high school quarterback out there. You have to wonder if maybe to a certain degree whether he's maxed out in terms of certain areas of his development, because Peyton just he threw for 6,000 yards and 70 TDs last year.
So
I think Roberts has more runway to develop, but that also means that the floor is maybe a little lower too.
Chris Mason, there's one thing I definitely need you to do. There's one thing I definitely need you to do, my friend. When you start throwing out these things about these kids you're excited about, I need comps. Who's a comp? Now you gave Bryce Young to Houston.
All right.
You gave Bryce Young to Houston. What are we doing for this kid?
All right. So the high-end comp, Jamison Roberts, based upon highlights from his playoff run, would be Deshaun Watson.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, he's got an arm. He's mobile. He throws on the run. He's got a serious cannon, and he's really mobile. And he's around, and he'll be probably 6'3", 6'4", 215 by the time 210 before he enrolls in a school. So Thievery, yeah, he's already starting to get some camp buzz. Like I said, Chad Simmons from On3 was at this Alabama combine thing that occurred over the weekend, and he was tracking Jamison Roberts at the event. So when one of the national guys from On3 is doing that, you kind of get a sense that he may be about to explode. But I think, he's very interested in. I think OU's gotten in early and maybe has grabbed a little bit of a lead. And I think the whole "you're our dude, we're not looking at anybody else" pitch has kind of resonated with him a little bit. So yeah, he's an interesting I mean, to just give you another opinion, on various podcasts, Josh McCuistion over at Sooner Scoop, he thinks he's a top 150 type guy looking at the film. So that's another opinion. If you want somebody different from me, who has been looking at a lot of high school quarterbacks over the last 20 years, that's where Josh thinks he is. I based upon his playoff highlights, and you just see him getting better and better and better. I think that's kind of a starting comp. So we'll see. But he could, to get into the top 10 of being the quarterbacks, as we know, I mean, Thievery, Texas just got a quarterback that I honestly hadn't heard of. They just got a verbal commitment for 27 from a quarterback I hadn't heard of before. I don't know anything about the guy. So, but for that guy, I mean, it didn't seem like he's in the top 20 right now. So, but to get into the top 20, the top 15, he's got to go to an Elite 11 camp. He's got to get an Elite 11 invite, and he's got a ball at the Elite 11 event. If he does all of those things, then he could easily jump, into the top 15, top 10 quarterback group. I'm not sure overall what I think about the the quarterback group overall. The Haven kid has absurd physical skills. Kavion Bryant, the guy who chose Texas Tech, I'm not sure about him. He looks like he might be more of an athlete than a quarterback. Trey Taylor, the guy OU was recruiting. They were recruiting him and Peyton Houston, who chose Nebraska. He looked really good on his Illinois film. Gunnar Rivers, I didn't think too much of. I looked at his film. It's pretty good. Texas A&M has a kid from Valdosta, Georgia, who's got a big arm, looks really athletic, but it doesn't look. I could see the quarterback list going up and down quite a bit between now and other than Haven at the top, I think there's definitely some room for some movement of the quarterback prospects.
How let me ask you this question before we get off of here, folks. You already know. Go ahead and like, subscribe, do all those different things for both of these channels, the Horns Down Podcast and Sooners 360. But Chris Mason, I want to ask you one last question before we jump out of here. Remember, guys, we're here for a good time, not a long time. But how, just popped in my head with how, and I'm sorry, it's going to be kind of crazy how I ask this, but with how many leftover quarterbacks, let's just call them that, for lack of a better term, but these leftover quarterbacks, meaning like the Aaron Nolans and guys like that are transferring from, from Ohio State to South Carolina to this place, to that place, and all the rest of that stuff. Obviously, if they're not starters or whatever the case may be, Hawkins went to West Virginia. He's going to be in a quarterback battle, which I think we all expect him to win. But when you start seeing things like that, do you see recruiting sites? Do you see college football recruiters start recruiting this differently with these kids, or you see like these kids in general just kind of shifting towards going to certain places that they know they can play? Maybe a 5-star kid goes to Baylor out, they get a pretty nice NIL deal. Maybe LSU comes and says, hey, we're going to offer you $5 million. And then Baylor says, hey, we can only offer you 2.5, but you can get on the field fast here. Like, you're going to be the starter, right? Are we going to see that happening? Because to me, it kind of seems like a lot of these quarterback rooms are going to be, filled with just quarterback, battles for just a second, for the 2 spot. You know what I'm saying? I mean, hell, Oregon, if you're going there, I mean, you're really betting on yourself. I think that you're just, praying and believing in your kid and your kid's ability, but you kind of get lost on the shuffle because let's just be real. Yeah, a 5-star kid that is, rated at, 1,000 on Rivals or 247 on 3, whatever you want to call it now. But a kid that's rated like that goes there to Oregon, and then guess what? He's still having to sit 2 years. He's not playing until maybe his sophomore or junior year, because here goes kid from Nebraska, the Rayola kid, who's right there behind Dante Moore. Oh, and guess what? Dante Moore still has eligibility if he just loves college football. You get what I'm saying? So
I think the question is, there's sort of two themes I think behind your question. One, I think the question I'm getting asked a lot is it still productive to really be recruiting high school quarterbacks?
Yes. Yeah, that to that point as well.
Yeah. Is it productive to be doing that? And then the other question you have is, how do you, with all the trans, I mean, like Oregon lost a kid who like barely enrolled there and bounced as soon as Rayola moved in because he thought, I thought I was the next guy.
Yeah.
So the question you have to have is how can you have a QB room with some competition and depth, but also in an environment where kids are not waiting more than a year to play and want to be starters. So, and if you're in a situation where you desperately need a quarterback, or your team struggled in a year you thought they were going to be good, and you need to go to the portal and grab somebody, a little bit like what OU did, right? Jackson Arnold just imploded, and now he's imploded at 2 places, and that kind of seems like half an OU problem, half a Jackson Arnold problem. But OU, Brent had to go get a quarterback, right? I mean, it was like, look, I've got to go get to save my job. I've got to go get a quarterback. So I think it's Aaron Nolan's a classic example, and the Deuce McKnight going to Ole Miss is another one, right? You know, is Deuce McKnight is it going to be the third school before he finds a place to start and gets developed? And I give Dante more credit, right, for realizing the UCLA thing under Chip was a mess, bailing on it, going to Oregon, and then being like, I got no problem sitting behind Bo Nix. And then he made the smart decision to come back and play college ball for another year from a long-term payoff picture. And there's all kinds of metrics there. Todd McShay, you can watch the Todd McShay podcast to see him talking about NFL success related to how many college starts you have. So yeah, I think keeping quarterbacks is hard. Keeping quarterback depth is hard. And the other question is, should we even be focused on high school quarterback recruiting at all? That you should just be picking off guys doing the Miami Pirate poaching route. You're watching Cristobal talk about how good a quarterback Darius Mensah is, and you're like, well, no kidding. Now that you snagged a 2-year starter from two other who's transferred over once already. That's the question. Now, the one thing I would say from an OU perspective, Chris, is that one of the clear things Nagy is portraying in all of his interviews and podcasts that I've been watching is that it's clear Nagy has a better idea on the cost of stuff from high school.
Yeah.
That the high school guys, he's getting a fix on what the real costs are for high school. That the portal is the Wild West and people are dropping cash and money on guys that are, that weren't that good to begin with, and it's crazy. It's not a sustainable platform for OU to be at in the portal trying to get 15 starter level players every year, right? That's just not sustainable.
You're not going to Mel Tucker it out there. You know what I'm saying? And at the end of the day, we've seen that happen with Mel Tucker at Michigan State. We've seen that happen here as Brady.
Well, you saw that with Norvell too. FSU's a mess about it right now.
But to my point, as Brady Trentham, shout out to Brady Trentham through the Keyhole podcast, as he would put it, on that offensive line a few years ago, we went and got G5 All-Stars, right? And not trying to knock those kids, but I mean that's pretty much what you got.
Well, I don't know they were. I think the problem was they weren't G5 All-Stars.
That was just something funny that he said to me.
But so I think the thing about it is Nagy is clearly articulating like, look, it's easier, it's cheaper for me to buy 25 high school kids who we really like and scout and evaluate, give them to our coaches, and then in 3 years, we're going to bleed some of those guys off that just aren't working and aren't successful.
I think you stick with that simply because I do think at some point, and Chris Mason and Jason, when you watch this, I want you guys to know I gave you guys a blueprint for how to fix NIL, and a lot of people are starting to echo those sentiments. And one of those things is put a cap at the high school level. There should be a cap at the high school level.
Yeah, exactly.
That should be done ASAP, immediately, expeditiously.
Well, it's just like the cap
right now. Adjective, adverb, whatever you want to say. It should be done right now. If you do that, that fixes a lot right then and there.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at the three pro sports, the major pro sports, right? The NFL has a rookie salary cap that makes the signing process. I mean, you used to remember like rookies were like holding out for big signing. I mean, Sam got like one of the last big signing bonuses.
$58 million.
Yeah, but now you ain't getting that cash if you're the first round quarterback. So, well, I mean, obviously the numbers have gone up, but just prorated out. So I think Nagy's basically saying that, look, our development process will get us where we need to be. We need to protect and retain and develop. I'm willing to go out and get a couple of guys if we need them, but that's not where we want to be. And the money, this is why he's screaming for high school wide receiver development, because he doesn't want to be in that. He doesn't want to be paying for high school. He doesn't want to be paying portal wide receiver money And he doesn't want to be paying portal quarterback money either. I mean, if OU had lost John Mateer, if he had just said, I'm going pro, and OU had to replace him with a high-level portal quarterback, that would have blown a big part of OU's budget. They wouldn't have been able to upgrade in the other areas they did. So he wants desperately for Brent and Arbuckle to have a quarterback development system where you're not constantly hitting the portal looking for those guys. Because, I mean, Miami got, did Miami get lucky or did they plan it correctly? You can't tell me that they were not a little bit. I mean, if the Mensa thing had gone south on them, who's their starting quarterback? I mean, they haven't developed or signed a quality high school quarterback at all.
I mean, they would have pivoted. They would have made a pivot. I'm sure they had.
But at a certain point, right? You're running out of time, and not everybody's gonna take that. Is gonna take the scumbag Miami money and bolt on their school.
Now, I agree with that, Chris Mason, but I also say, on the other hand, Pete Golding. I mean, there would have been a lot of tampering, a lot more tampering going on.
And there is, but there are kids that would be like, I'm not going there. But I mean, and the other question is talent wise, right? Like I mean, they got very lucky that Cam Ward didn't go pro. He was supposed to go pro, then he veered at the last minute. Obviously, he veered at the last minute because Miami sent him a big bag of money, But he could have decided, well, I'm going to go ahead and go pro regardless. So the Miami thing has a risk to its own. You just don't know what quarterbacks are going to be in the portal, or what quarterbacks they would. Yeah, Jenna, they would have pivoted to somebody else, but would they have pivoted to somebody as at that same quality of Mensa? And if at some point, some kid's going to be like, no, I'm not leaving the place I am. I like the coaches I'm currently coaching for, and is going to tell their management, no, don't take Miami's phone call. I mean, they're going to run into that at some point. I mean, we'll see how it all pans out. But again, that you've got to, at some point Miami's signing elite high school offensive linemen because they know they don't want to be in that. They don't want to be buying those guys every year. They're spending the money on the Cantwell kid after they spent money on the Mayunga kid. So we'll see what happens. But Nagy's clearly indicating, I don't want to be in the portal buying offensive line, wide receivers, or quarterbacks. I don't want to be in that unless something drastic has happened. Some couple of guys have gone pro earlier than expected, or something's gone wrong in the development process. But that's what he clearly is indicating. It's cheaper to get good talent from the high school ranks and develop them than it is to keep buying guys from the portal.
All right, you guys heard it from Chris Mason himself. That was a nice discussion because, I mean, that's my whole thing is that I think that you're moving in a direction to where I think everybody's having to make a real vital decision. I think that you're going to see a lot of teams, especially a lot of top teams, if they can't land that guy, go all out on the skill players and then that defensive line and trenches and make sure that everything is great around them. That way they can mimic some of those championship years that Georgia had, as far as you have a really good game manager who can be elite at times, but also won't hurt you, won't lose a game for you, but will get you to where you're trying to go. You get what I'm saying? So I think that's what you're trying to do as far as just trying to piecemeal your team together in that instance. I think you'll go get somebody who's obviously above average, and who can be elite at times, but you're not asking him to be elite. You're just asking him to be a great game manager, right? So I think you'll see a bunch of teams who will have to go through that, but you're hoping that you're able to land one or more kids from the high school ranks and still be able to develop properly. So, I mean, that means a lot in this day and age, but yeah.
I mean, you look at this, you look at the Super Bowl teams, right? One team had an offensive line in a running game and the other team didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, and
Seahawks look like us against Bama that first time around. My God. I mean,
they were just, I mean, and I'm not knocking Sam Darnold. He's not Peyton Manning, but he has a Super Bowl ring. Why?
Yep.
Because he's an effective quarterback and knows that his defense is elite. So I don't need to put the ball. I don't need to put the ball in harm's way. You know, my defense has the Pats. You know, in a chokehold. So we'll see. I will say that one last winter workout comment is, Bentley looks fantastic. So I'm hoping we get a spring game, and I'm hoping we get a spring game where we can watch him throw the ball around.
Receivers,
I've heard nothing on the receivers yet.
any receiver.
No, it doesn't. Haven't heard anything on the defensive tackles either, or really the linebackers other than Caleb Curry. Matt Nelson's getting a lot of comments from places. Sooner Scoop mentioned him today. A lot of other places, and that's not surprising based upon his athletic trait stuff that was just through the roof. You got to mold it into a defensive end, but that appears to be what our coaching staff is good at doing. So,
All right.
last thing, Grayson Halton showing up in the early third round in some mock drafts at post
He
Senior
should.
Bowl.
Day two guy, and I think that OU players are going to land and stick, and I think that you have a lot of there's a bunch of OU guys in there currently. The kid that transferred here from Lealu.
Yeah, he's gonna get a big contract with the Raiders.
I think kids like that, where you're saying, hey, these kids are undrafted. You saw, obviously everybody kept talking about the highlight play, the strip fumble that Ethan Downs got, but hey, that's a real NFL game. Worked himself from the practice squad up.
Yeah,
Again, I think these OU guys are really sticking because the thing is that it's not. It's yes, you want to have the flash and dash guys. You got to have those guys as well on your NFL squad, but you also need to have those tenured vets as well.
you've got to make hay in the third and fourth rounds.
Exactly,
If
got
you
to,
you've got to you got to make hay in those. So, but anyway, but Halton's Senior Bowl, his great Senior Bowl week has not gone unnoticed with the draft nicks and the draft mock draft guys. So he's moving up. So, and again, that's just more ammo for Chavis and Bates in the recruiting world, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is Sooner Cowboys. I'm pretty sure that David Stone's a flashy guy. I'm pretty sure that Cooper Hackett's a flashy guy, and Jake Krull sounds like he's going to be a flashy guy as well. So depends what you want to call flashy. So.
But all right, folks, look, we've been on here for damn near an hour. We try to keep these shows short. Yes, guys, it's on my mind right now, so I got to say it. Jason is doing his SEC Gauntlet shows. I guess they're doing it on on Mondays as well. Either we will be doing this show every Monday at 8 p.m., as we usually do, Central Standard Time, or we will move it to Wednesday. But we will let you guys know the next time that you see us. So definitely have your notification bells on. That way you get alerts and all the rest of that stuff when we come on. We
Follow me on Twitter. I'll make once we have a schedule laid out. I'll obviously put some posts on Twitter about it.
Yeah, go to the bio and definitely follow us all on Twitter and all the rest of that stuff. And again, like the video, please subscribe to the channels, do all those different things. The Horns Down Podcast, Hall of Fame College Football Podcast with Jason and Coach, obviously, but also Sooners 360. And Chris Mason will be back Wednesday night to give you guys the latest scoop on the high school recruiting as well. So with that